I started the recording.
I'll start the recording. A recording has started. Somebody started already. So you.
Yeah, I started.
Okay, good. Yeah, start.
Okay, so I will be presenting. I will establish ADS CFT correspondence and also explain ADS and CFT and quantum field theory and ADS space. So the plan of the lecture is to review a bit of ADS space. Thanks to Pushkar, I will skip Poincare patch thing, and then I will do QFT on this ADS space, the scalar QFT, and I will give idea about how to go for fermionic fields, gauge fields, and then I will do CFT, and I will, thanks to Pushkar, I will skip SOD generators. I don't really need it, and then I will establish the correspondence, and I will talk about how we practically use ADS CFT correspondence for, say, theoretical purposes. Okay, so if I speak a bit fast, please stop me. Okay, so ADS space is a D plus one dimensional antidigital space, and it is defined by embedding in a D plus two higher dimensional space. And the metric on this embedding space is given by the modified Minkowski metric, where we take time to be two dimensional. Okay, and this RD comma two space has SOD comma 2 invariance as Pushkar established. This SOD comma 2 matrix satisfies this identity. But now we don't really need that. Now we work with a subspace of this RD comma 2, and the subspace is defined by this equation where this SOD comma 2 invariant quadratic form is some constant. Okay, this constant R square is the length scale of the ADS. For now, we can take it to be one. That is, you can divide everything by R square and redefine coordinates. So you will have one on RHS like Pushkar did in his lecture. Okay. So note that this defining condition for the subspace is invariant under SOD comma 2 because this is SOD comma 2 invariant quadratic form. So this surface will have SOD comma 2 isometry. So it will inherit all the symmetries from the embedding space. Okay, and because of this symmetry, any 2 points on this script F surface can be connected by SOD comma 2 matrix. Okay, so now a few comments on the intrinsic coordinate system which we will use in this surface. So this is how we go. So this is the defining equation for the surface. Let the sum of the position coordinate be some small r square, and so then we will see that the sum of the time coordinates, time-like coordinates, is some r square plus r square. As far as this small r square is constant, this sum of this square is constant. So this t1 and t2 can be parameterized by sine t and cos t with this amplitude. Okay, so this has been done, and now we have to worry about the spatial coordinates. So small r square is the sum of the capital sum of the xi square. So this suggests that this xi live on a sphere of radius r, d minus 1 sphere. So this is how we write the coordinates. So the vector x will be at some angle theta 1 from the x1 axis. So the x1 coordinate will be r cos theta 1. Then we take the other component r sine theta 1. This component will be along the subspace expanded by x2, x3, x4, xd. Okay, now this blue vector, this has magnitude r sine theta 1. This will be at some angle theta 2 with respect to x2 axis. So for that you take cos 2 theta. And then if you again take, and if you work with this r sine theta 1 times sine theta 2, this will be a vector in the subspace extended by x3, x4, xd. Then again take cos theta 3. So this is how you proceed.
Yes.
Okay. Now the metric inherited, the metric which this surface script F inherits from the embedding space can be easily found, and you can do the calculation and show that we get this. To proceed, we have this expression of for t and the position coordinates. We can calculate the differential dt1, dt2, and just take a square and some this thing and do this summation. At the end, you will get this. Okay. So note that the choice of coordinate system manifests two symmetry. First, time translation, and the other SOD symmetry. Because of this space, the matrix has a piece which is the metric on the unit sphere, SD minus 1. Okay, because of this, we can easily see it has SOD symmetry, and since no coefficients have explicit time dependence, T dependence, so it has T translation symmetry. The whole metric actually has SOD comma 2 symmetry, but this will not be manifested, but this will be realized in a more complicated way because the choice of the coordinates has broken the symmetry. Okay, because of the sin t and cos t, which was appearing in the parametrization of t1 and t2, we see that t and t plus 2 pi define the same coordinate. Okay, so for all practical purposes, this t coordinate can be compactified to 0 to 2 pi for this script f surface. But there will be some problem if we look at this metric. So this is something like a Schwarzschild metric if we replace this r square by minus gm by small r. Okay, so now we see that, and we are having minus signs with dt square. So this suggests that this t is like the time lag direction. So you can, and to formally check that, just see that del by del t is a time like vector. So from this, it is clear that t is a time like time coordinate, and we don't want periodicity in time. Otherwise, you will have closed time like curve. And Pushkar has established by solving equation that we indeed get closed time like curves. So to remove those, what we do, we take universal cover by extending the t coordinate from minus infinity to plus infinity. If we look at this metric, there is no problem in extending this t. This is something similar to what we do in Schwarzschild coordinates. Initially, we start with just rt and theta, and then we see that we are only able to cover one patch. We can't describe the physics inside the horizon. Then we go to Kruskal coordinates or tortoise coordinates, and those coordinates we see that we are easily able to extend our manifold, and then we discover these four regions for Schwarzschild metrics. So something similar is happening here. Okay, so the ADS D+1 space is defined as the universal cover of the script f surface, the subspace which I was working with. So for completeness, the metric of the ADS is this, where t runs from minus infinity to plus infinity, r is the radial coordinates run from 0 to infinity, and omega d minus 1 is angles on SD minus 1.
Okay, I'm a little confused. Which is the universal covering space?
When you extend t from minus infinity to plus infinity, then you are doing the working with the universal cover of this original surface. Okay, so ADS space is defined as a universal cover, where we extend t coordinates to run from minus infinity to plus infinity.
The real axis is the cover of a finite interval. The R is the cover of any finite interval.
Okay.
So I will also just comment here that what people call the ADS space is a little bit ambiguous. So in some papers, the universal cover is what is treated, in other places the surface is ADS, and they explicitly treat the covering space separately. So it's written as ADS tilde D+1 or something like that. So that's just a matter of notation. So
okay, thank you, Pushkar. So just to understand few thing about how this ADS space behave, we will go to slightly new coordinate systems where R is parameterized as R10 rho. So since R run from 0 to infinity, this rho will run from 0 to pi by 2, from 0 to pi by 2. In this coordinate system, the matrix becomes this. Okay, we will analyze this metric in two extremes, one near R equal to 0 and near R equal to pi by 2, which is indeed the boundary. So near R equal to 0, this matrix just becomes the flat spacetime, Minkowski metric. So near origin, the spacetime is flat. Okay, and near R equal to infinity, that is pi rho equal to pi by 2, the matrix becomes this. It is the product of 2D flat spacetime with a unit sphere. Okay, to write it formally, this is R1, 1 cross unit sphere SD minus 1. Since there are no terms mixing these angles and these coordinates, so the space is factorized properly. Okay, and when and what will be the boundary when you are working with the boundary? Although this factor is blowing up, but for now remove that. This is overall scaling. At the boundary, rho is some constant which is infinity, bit weird, but we will later work with some cutoff where rho is some something pi by 2 minus epsilon, whereas epsilon is some small number. Then this d rho square will be 0. So we see that the boundary is a product of time like space RT, one-dimensional time cross unit sphere. So it is the boundary is a cylindrical boundary in this coordinate system. just a comment that this ADS space is really a finite space, although the rho runs from 0 to pi by 2. If you calculate the length, radial length of the space, it comes out to be infinite because of the sec integral. Okay. The metric has this sec sine square, sec square. Okay. Okay. That's why we usually draw this picture for the ADS, the cylindrical thing, because this circle demonstrates that this is a unit sphere, d-1 unit sphere, and the cylinder is drawn at the boundary, so it is cylindrical infinity. Okay. So now we look at the null curves. So the null curves corresponds to ds square equal to 0, and we find that the rho is plus minus t is the solution for the null curve. So the light ray travel at 45 degree. So suppose if you are sitting at origin in this coordinate system, note that this space is homogeneous. So the origin, any point is equivalent to any other.
Is the solid cylinder, right? The space is the solid cylinder in
yes,
the interior. Yeah.
Yeah. Suppose you are sitting at the origin and you throw away light. So the light will reach to boundary in a finite time, finite coordinate time pi by 2, which when translated to proper time, it will be r times pi by 2. R was the length scale of the ADS. And suppose if you put virtually a kind of reflector at the boundary, the light will return to you in a finite time pi by 2. So in a total time pi times r, the light will return back to you. So from this we see somehow in a weird manner, although ADS is infinitely big, it is behaving as if it is a box of finite size, because when you are throwing a ball, it is coming back to infinite time. And we will see, and this will affect the quantization. When we do quantum theory, we will find that the eigenvalues are discrete. It is very well known fact that if you are working with a compact space and quantizing particles on that, then the spectrum will be discrete. And if the space is infinite with no bound potential, then the spectrum will be continuous. Suppose you are working with free particle which can live from minus infinity to plus infinity. The solutions are plane wave. This momentum can take any value. If you are working with potential in a well, then the spectrum is discrete and pi by L, those kind of things. So here, because of the box nature of this ADS, although the space is infinite, but the spectrum will be discrete. Okay. So ADS spectrum will be discrete. And yeah, just for completeness, the metric which this ADS space satisfies, the Einstein equation which this ADS space satisfies is this, where the stress energy tensor is proportional to metric. So the energy density is constant. And this is just a cosmological constant, and that too negative. Someone has comment? Okay, and that too negative cosmological constant, to see that we see the 0 component of the stress energy tensor, which is the energy density, and is proportional to G00, and G00 is negative. That's why energy density is negative. So that's what
the G mu nu is not a constant, no?
Not a constant, but the cosmological constant term is lambda G mu nu. The stress energy tensor has to be proportional to metric. It doesn't have to be constant.
Right.
This will dictate that the energy density is constant, because you again divide by the length, so G cancels out.
Yes.
Just for completeness, ADS space is the solution of Einstein equation with negative cosmological constant, and there is another one, de Sitter space, that is a solution with positive cosmological constant. Okay, now with this background, I will do quantum field theory in ADS space. So for now, I will not quantize gravity. We will have a work with fixed background. The background skeleton is ADS, and we will consider a scalar quantum field. So the most basic action we can take is the Klein-Gordon. So we work with the Klein-Gordon action. Note that we can have a coupling to gravity, and by this term, Ricci scalar times pi square. But for ADS space, Ricci scalar is constant. So putting this term will be just redefining mass. So we don't do that. It is unnecessary. So yeah, given this Klein-Gordon action, the equation of motion corresponding to this is this plane waves, D'Alembert phi minus m square phi. If it was Minkowski, then the solution would have just been plane wave. But here the DLM, now we have to use the general expression for this D'Alembert operator, the wave operator, and it is very well known that this is this. We have seen in, I think, GR courses. So using the metric of the ADS, we can expand this equation, and finally we get this big mess. We don't have to worry in detail. I will present you the solution systematically. So what you are actually doing, if it was just Minkowski space, we would have solved this equation and we would have find the eigenmodes, the eigenfunctions, in terms of which our quantum fields can be expanded. That was the plane wave. But this time, because of metric, we will get something else. So we want to solve this equation and find the eigenmodes, and in terms of which I can expand my quantum field. And the corresponding coefficient to those modes will be creation and annihilation operator appropriately, as you will see below. So the goal is to solve this big equation. So since this is mixing a lot of things, time, radial coordinates, and the angular coordinates, so we will use method of separation of variable to solve this. Okay. And because of this lot of missing in these coordinates, we will have to develop some systematic approach. So the general approach to use separation of variable is by looking at symmetries. Look at manifest symmetries and then make an answer that your trial solution will be proportional to a solution corresponding to that symmetry. For example, I will make it precise. The SOD symmetry was manifest because of the coordinate choice, because this piece was explicitly appearing in the metric and this angle was not mixing with other. Okay, so we look at the solution proportional to spherical harmonics. SOD corresponds to spherical harmonics. If it was SO3, then we would have usual spherical harmonics, which we have for hydrogen atoms. Okay, this system also have manifest time translation symmetry. Then corresponding to that, we will have this wave, the phase space. There, this omega is the energy. I'm doing all this to skip the big calculation. Okay, so the T dependence give us this factor, energy factor, and theta dependence will give us spherical harmonics. So we have managed to extract the time function and angular function, and what is left for now is the radial function. So for this, we will have to do some work, and this work will be non-trivial. And why the work is non-trivial? Because the choice of coordinates has broken the SOD, 2 symmetry. Although symmetry is there, but it is realized in a very complicated manner. Just for completeness, these are hyperspherical harmonics. The spherical function is d plus 2 in d dimension. So the equation they satisfies. So these are the eigen solution of the Laplacian operator, and the eigenvalue is not L into L plus 1, but this changes to something else, d minus 2. In d equal to 3, it reduces to the usual thing. Okay. So if you put this ansatz in the big equation, then you get that the radial wave function satisfies this equation. Okay. Note that this, and yeah, we will solve this equation. And for now, we don't have any discreteness condition on energy omega, but solving this radial equation will give us a discreteness condition in a very weird manner. It's very new. I have not seen a quantization appearing like this before. Okay. So I will try to solve this equation easy. It is easy to solve in two extreme limits, near r equal to 0 and r equal to infinity. So near r equal to 0, this differential equation reduces to this. Okay, you don't have to really go in detail how this is looking. I will say the necessary things. This differential equation is a Cauchy-Euler equation. And for that, you can, as we have seen in maths courses, you can use this substitution trial that wave function is proportional to some power of r. Okay. And by solving, you get that psi r is r ki power L or r ki power minus this with some negative exponent. So this is singular at r equal to 0. So discard this. So near r equal to 0, the wave function, radial part of the wave function goes like this, r ki power L. Okay. Similarly, at r equal to infinity, the wave function reduces to this. Okay. Note that this differential equation near r equal to infinity and near r equal to 0, it doesn't have information about the momentum, energy. This omega is the energy, so roughly it is p square plus m square. So this equation doesn't have any omega piece. So near r equal to 0 and r equal to infinity, this differential equation doesn't know about momentum, energy. Okay, this is very crucial thing. You will see how it will affect our calculation later. So this is again Cauchy-Euler equation here, r equal to infinity. Use this substitution, r ki power some beta, and we get that beta has to be this. Okay, just define minus beta to be some delta. This is our delta, So near r equal to infinity, the wave function is behaving like r to the power minus delta. And in between, the general solution is very dangerous. It will look very, it's quite heavy. I will just present the result. But with this, we can do some analysis. So the whole differential equation was a second order differential equation. And in general, it will have two solutions, one f plus and f minus, okay? And the linear combination of this will be the most general solution. So I have to adjust these coefficients a and b such that near r equal to 0, the solution goes like RL. And at r equal to infinity, the solution goes like r to the power minus delta. Okay, so there will be some ratio a and b, a by b, which fixes the behavior near r equal to 0 to be this. And there will be some other ratio a by b, which fixes the ratio, the wave function to be this at r equal to infinity. It is in general, this a by b ratio might not be equal near r equal to 0 side and r equal to infinity side if we don't, if we work with any energy, if we work with any omega. And the reason is, and if that is the case, then this will not make sense because this a and b will be function of coordinates. So it is not a linear combination. Okay, it is a kind of functional combination. And that is not what we want to do. So the reason this happened is, this will happen, you can do the calculation and check it, is because the whole differential equation knows about the momentum, and it knows how the particle, the wave function, is flowing from r equal to 0 to infinity. We are independently solving at r equal to 0 and r equal to infinity. And now what we have to do is we have to patch up this solution. And when we do this patching up, the information about energy will come, because in the middle, this energy, in the middle, this term will be significant, and this term has information about energy. Okay, so when you impose this condition, that this ratio which fixes the behavior, the desired behavior in r equal to 0 and r into infinity side, this will give you the discreteness condition on omega. That calculation I will not show, it's very big mess. And because of this, you will find the discrete energy eigenvalues. So I will flash you the answer. So this delta was defined to be this sum function, and we find that this discrete eigenenergies will be given by this delta plus L plus 2n, where n is integer and L is integer. And this is the full wave function. It is expressed in terms of the Jacobi polynomials, which is written in terms of the hypergeometric functions, big mess. These Pauch-Hamburg symbols are used. Note that we don't have to worry about this. What matters to us is ADS-CFT correspondence, and the CFT is on the boundary. So when we are working with the boundary, we have to work with large R limit. And the large R limit, we knows how this function behaves. It behaves like r to the power minus delta. So we have to work with that. So things are okay. But right now, we don't need this full expression. This is just for completeness. Okay, so we have found that this psi NL is the radial wave function. This is the angular wave function. This was the time part. So this, by multiplying this at the end, we so this as a whole is the eigenmodes. This is the analog of the plane waves. Okay, this is the analog of the plane waves, which we get in the Minkowski quantum field theory. So in terms of these eigenmodes, our general field, scalar field, can be expanded, okay, as a linear combination of f and f star. For now, anyone has doubt?
There is some index on omega as well, right? Like omega n or something.
Yes, sure. Omega NL.
NL, correct.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So yeah, so the phi will be this. For now, phi was a scalar, real scalar field. So it will be linear combination of this eigenmodes, and to impose linearity condition, we take the complex conjugate.
See, actually, we should not be too surprised that the omega came out, discrete, because you just think of this as classical differential equation. It's a finite size cylinder, right, in which you are trying to set up some membrane vibrating. So because of the finite size, the frequencies came out quantized. Like, I mean, yeah, even like on a drum tabla, right? It's just like, I mean, from classical partial differential equation point of view, this Omega, like you know how you solve cylindrical coordinates, you get Bessel functions, but only discrete values. So it's fairly standard. I don't think that there is anything unusual about this quantization because the space is finite.
I'm actually expressing this wave function not in terms of rho, which was going from 0 to pi by 2, in terms of r, and the radial extent is infinite. The volume of ADS is infinite. The reason this will happen is I am about to present, because ADS matrix gives a kind of attractive potential. I will present this.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the mode expansion of the scalar field, and later this coefficient will be promoted to operator when we do canonical quantization. So this will be annihilation operator. This will be creation operator. Why this is annihilation operator? Because this is the coefficient corresponding to this f, and this f has this piece, e to the power minus iota et piece, if we make analogy to our usual quantum field theory. Okay, so a few comments on discretization. So what I was telling is that somehow ADS is giving ADS background is giving a kind of attractive potential, which is responsible for discrete quantization. And we can see from this that the large r, that wave function decays at large r. It goes like r to the power minus delta. So it is not a scattering solution. It is actually a bound state. So there is some kind of attractive potential there. To make an analogy, if you do the usual quantum field theory in Minkowski space with a harmonic potential, then the eigenmodes will be Hermite polynomials, and they are discrete. Okay, so attractive potential will give you discrete spectrum, even though the space is infinite. So there are two ways to think. One is the ADS is somehow providing you attractive potential, and the other way to think is that ADS is somehow behaving like a finite size box, because the light is coming back at infinite time. Was this okay?
Fine. Is everybody okay? Anybody has questions?
Okay, so I will go. So we have this eigenfunctions f. Okay,
How do we think
and
of, hello.
yes.
How do we think of this attractive potential in terms of a negative cosmological constant?
I don't know. I can comment on this, but since negative cosmological constant is like negative energy density, so maybe it will attract. I think I can't comment more. Can anyone wants to comment? Are you?
Question I just what did you ask?
How can we interpret this attractive potential in terms of a negative cosmological constant?
So, you know, the positive cosmological constant is always pushing things out. It's exponentially expanding. And negative cosmological constant is going to do the opposite. It's going to contract. So, if you think of trajectories, they'll be coming together. Whereas in a De Sitter universe, they'll be flying apart.
Okay. Yes.
It's like negative energy density, so potential is negative. It is attracting.
Yeah, actually, the intuition is slightly goes you know, unusual, but because the positive cosmological constant you somehow think is positive energy, but the fate of trajectories is to get pushed away from each other. So it's more like which is why the inflationary universe and all of these have some kind of anomalous behaviors. Anyway, yeah, but it's a good question. Yes.
So we have this eigenfunctions, and we often want to normalize these eigenfunctions. Okay. So I will not go in this detail. The inner product which we use is the Klein-Gordon inner product, and it is defined as follows. We take a hypersurface and we evaluate this integral. I hope it is familiar to usual quantum mechanics. It is like current, and it can be shown that in some cases this will be independent of which surface you use. I have written the detail, but I will not go. We don't actually need this, but just for completeness, I'm presenting it because these functions eigenmodes are orthogonal, and orthogonal in the sense when we use that inner product, then the inner product is this Kronecker deltas, okay, in quantum numbers, and we expand our quantum field as usual in terms of this f and f star. So when we do the quantization, this a and a star are promoted to creation and annihilation operator, And we impose this commutation of phi and pi, where pi is the conjugate momentum field, the usual thing we do. It is iota times Kronecker delta. Now, A dagger can be expressed in terms of phi and pi, the usual thing we do in quantum mechanics. We'll differentiate this with respect to time and have a similar expression for pi with some modified coefficient. And by appropriately taking linear combination, it can be shown that A can be expressed as a summation of this quantum fields phi and pi with some coefficient. Similarly, A dagger can be written, and using that expression, I can compute the commutation relation, and this comes out to be this, and it very well matches to the usual harmonic commutation relation. Okay, so this indeed justifies that this A dagger are the creation and annihilation operator. So the spectrum of the theory is defined as follows: the vacuum is the state which is annihilated by all the annihilation operator, and these, when we act one A dagger, it is like one particle state. This is not really a one particle state, which I will discuss below, and this is like two particle state, but an energy is the sum of these two energies, omega NL plus omega N prime L prime. Okay, the reason why.
Yeah, I just had a doubt. So when you did the mode expansion, the second term that was there in the expansion, does it like the, for example, in the standard QM, we have that the second term essentially is the quantum, like the field propagating in backward direction in time. So is it, so I mean, negative energy if you want to interpret the other way. So is it like that? Because if that is the case, then for a particle moving backwards in time, the potential would be repulsive.
Yeah, I think you are putting together too many things. I think this is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it is true for a particle.
It is traveling in backward time, but also in opposite direction. So maybe that will compensate.
No, it's okay. Backward in time, trajectories will come together, not a go apart, not a problem. But why is that wrong?
No, I mean, that is, I mean, if I just look at the anti-particle solutions, then like this space is, I mean, it's fine, I guess.
You have to work with Dirac equation.
I think it's fine.
I think it's okay. And in any case, because of lack of time translation invariance, this idea of antiparticle just being a flip of particle is not that easy. But it's, yeah, so you can't just, because the metric is changing, if you just flip it, then suddenly it goes into a weaker metric space. So it's not that simple, but it's roughly the same interpretation. You will do a time flip as well as a charge conjugation, and then it will work, I think. It will give you the forward motion, so all forward moving particles, either positively charged or negatively charged, will be converging in this space.
Thank you, sir. Okay, why this doesn't have particle interpretation? There's these states. When we act A dagger, this is not called really one particle state, but although we will use the lingo, note that E is, in usual case, it is square root P square plus M square, and the energy expression we got this. So at the expression level, we can't really make an analogy and define mass. But the general way we define mass in quantum field theory is by looking at the poles of the propagator. The propagator usually goes like this. And when we look at the poles of the propagator, then the momentum is actually the continuous variable. But in this case, although there is not anything like momentum, but the analog will be a discrete variable. The eigenmodes are discrete. So there is no well-defined notion of pole. So in this case, in this quantum field theory, there is no well-defined. So this excited states should not be interpreted as n particle states. But although we use the lingo, but even if you want to define mass, just for convenience, so you can do this in the usual quantum field theory. The mass is energy, the lowest value of energy is the mass when the momentum is 0. In this case, the lowest value of the energy is just delta when L and 2n is 0. So you can say that delta is the mass.
What is delta? There is an expression for it.
Yeah, delta was something like this.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, this. This is the mass which I initially started with, but somehow it is behaving like a.
So there was a mass in the Klein-Gordon equation you started, and R is this radius of the interdisk.
Radius.
Yeah, fine.
Later we see that the excited state don't have particle interpretation, but even if we want to give the particle interpretation, the mass is renormalized as this. Okay, so this is the n particle state. Applying k operators, k particle state, the energy will be the sum of each particles. Okay, it's not really needed. Okay, so few comments on the how we will do the interacting theory. When we do the the interacting theory will be, if we put interaction between fields or maybe this field and gravity, then it can be taken into account by perturbative techniques as far as the coupling constant are small. But usually we will face the UV divergence. So to overcome this, what people do is they embed this theory in string theory. That is done in some way. And why the string theory solves the problem? Because the string theory naturally has UV cutoff. That is the string scale. You can see at this level, the Feynman diagrams are like this. Two particles are coming, and they are and there is a kind of singular point in the diagram from where they merge and then scatter. If you draw the string wala analog, then you will have a kind of Pant diagram. Here, these are string. This will evolve here, and this will patch up like this, and this will go like this. Okay. So here there is no point thing appearing here. So because of the finite string length, although that is very small, there is UV cutoff present in the theory that will protect us from the UV divergence. Okay, this is just a heuristic comment, and yeah, a few comments on how we work.
So can the divergences be solved without going to string theory? Can you implement the cutoffs without string theory?
I will show you a few things about cutoff. We have to put cutoff by hand in the theory, and it will be shown that the UV cutoff in the quantum theory will be dual to IR cutoff, the large scale cutoff in the CFT theory. But there you have to put the cutoff by hand. You can do that. In many cases, we do put cutoff by hand, but string theory gives you natural cutoff. It will not be artificial. Okay, so if
I think simple answer to his question is, at least I don't understand whether it is there or not. Probably the divergences are there if you don't do this duality between. That's called duality, isn't it? This
correspondence, ADS-CFT.
No, not ADS-CFT. This the very small becomes equivalent to very large eventually. So like the fact that they don't come to a point but actually then begin to go apart again. So that is called duality actually. And that is what saves the ultraviolet divergences of string theory. But if you didn't invoke strings, then maybe there will be divergences. But I would think that there should not be any serious problem unless that, so it would depend on, doing loop integral and the measure of that loop integral. So in D dimension, you will have too much weight in the numerator, and denominator is only propagator, which is always only quadratic. So you will get fairly bad divergences if you are doing this in high dimensions. Probably true. Okay.
All right. So just as a quick follow-up, Shoaib, do you have the propagator written down somewhere for this case? Just to look and.
No.
Okay.
Maybe I have paper. I will share that with you.
Sure.
So just a comment, if you had fermion fields, you will use Dirac-Lagrangian. You will be solving Dirac equation for eigenmodes. For gauge field, you will be solving Maxwell equation. And if you want to quantize gravity, then you will do this perturbative analysis. You will take fluctuation around the skeleton ADS metric, and you will be quantizing these modes. Okay. Okay. So now with this setup, I will do to establish the correspondence between ADS safety correspondence. I will have to establish a relationship between all the observables in this quantum gravity theory, okay, to the CFT theory. So the knowledge of this n-point correlator functions, which I will discuss what it is the knowledge of all the n-point correlator functions is equivalent to knowing everything that can be known in the theory, quantum theory. Any observables can be expressed in terms of this. Okay, the n-point correlator functions are the expectation value of this product of fields. Okay, and why the knowledge of these is equivalent to knowing everything? The general answer is this: there is some LSZ formula which give us the expression for the S matrix. This means this S matrix is the transition amplitude for the initial state I to evolve to some final state F. This I can be N1 particle state, and this F is the N2 particle state.
So I and F are perturbative state. They are faraway states. And
yes,
this is just a very fancy way of saying that the particles will all go apart. Anyway, I should. I mean, it's a lecture by itself, but yeah, this is Riemann-Simon-Zimmermann formula, and usually that's right. So the thing in the middle, the time-ordered product of the fields, is the full field theory expression, which has by itself no physical interpretation. But you have to hit it with these squared bracket operators, which effectively remove the external legs on the diagram. So you will be left with only the S matrix, the transition matrix from initially free particles in state I to final state particles in F. So this is a standard field theory construction.
I will not be going in very detail about this, why this correlation function knowledge is like knowing everything, but I will just making few comments to make you familiar with this. What we usually do is that this S matrix this expression, knowledge of S matrix will be equivalent to know is this M, which appears in the Fermi-Golden ratio formula. And from there, you can calculate the cross sections. So just to make you comfortable that the knowledge of these correlators is equivalent to knowing the physical quantities. Physical observables of the theory.
Yeah.
The last comment on this.
Yes. Here the time is also not really infinite. Not the time, only the covering space is infinite. But any one patch actually any one interval covers all the physics. So that will be some added complication probably, or not, I don't know.
It will be, but the way I will proceed, I will not take that into account, I think.
Because usually this is sort of called asymptotic formulae, the asymptotic interpretations, where you do have infinite space. But here the whole space is tiny, so how the LSZ works is not completely clear, but okay.
This formula I have taken for the usual Minkowski quantum field theory.
Right.
My motivation was just to make an analogy that what we will doing in this ADS quantum gravity theory will be just computing correlators and establishing correspondence.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So this n-point correlation function is actually not will not be well defined in full quantum theory. If we quantize gravity, then these coordinates will lose their meaning due to metric fluctuation. Usually, this would have been the functions of length and angle, not exactly of the coordinates, because due to coordinate transformation, this x1 and xk will change. So they will be function of lengths and angles, but when metric will fluctuate, length and angle will also fluctuate. So we see that this correlation function, when it is inside the bulk of the ADS, that you say the bulk correlation function is not well defined when we quantize gravity. Okay, so these
could you just
are
explain
not
what do you mean by metric fluctuation?
Okay. So the metric can also be interpreted as a quantum field. Okay, and okay, I think I have written something. Yeah. If you want to do full theory, you will be including the gravitational term in the action, and this is made up of metric derivatives of metric. Now this g mu nu is also some field, so you will have to do path integral or canonical quantization corresponding to that also. To do this quantization, we do this. We generally take a perturbation around a skeleton metric. Here it is GADS. Okay, and this h mu nu will be the field. Quantizing this will be give you gravitons, those particles. So you plug this expansion in this, and you do the small h expansion, and then you get this as effective action, and this governs the gravitational action, the free part of the photons. This is the interaction between scalar field and gravity, and because of this, these bulk correlators will not be well defined. Okay, and there is one a heuristic way to look at this is that these coordinates themselves will be not well defined because of metric fluctuation. They will lose their meaning. It will be a kind of fuzzy thing. So there is no local operator in true quantum theory of gravity. Okay, because a local point is not defined when we quantize gravity. Okay, so what we will do, but on the boundary it will be defined, because on the boundary the metric fluctuation will die out. It will not, otherwise it will blow up to infinity. We want the metric fluctuation h mu nu to die out at boundary. So the points on the boundary will be well defined. So this bulk, this correlation function will be defined on boundary. So what is well defined is when we take limit of these points, where to by this taking Ri to be infinity, that taking this point on boundary, then this will be well defined. But we will modify it a bit, and this is the reason we saw that the wave function decays at infinity.
Wait 1 second. So I think I understood your argument for why the coordinates are not defined on the bulk. Could you just explain again why you said that the fluctuations have to die out on the boundary?
A kind of boundary condition. I was thinking like that. Otherwise, we will not. This will not be normalizable.
So you said theory. Something will blow up, right? So what is blowing up?
Okay. I was thinking that metric fluctuation will blow up. H mu nu will blow up at infinity. Okay, how to say that? It's like boundary condition. The fluctuation in field, we usually take it to die out to infinity. I'm not able to give some argument. Can anyone comment?
So I think that is the question, perhaps whether it has to be imposed or whether it is natural to ADS. That is probably the question. Okay, wait, I don't know the answer.
Maybe what we can do is that we have the effective Lagrangian with which we work. So we will have to check. We can derive the corresponding gravity wala equation from this, and maybe from there we can see how the fluctuation will behave in the extreme limit R. So we might have something like R ki power L and R ki power minus L type of behavior. So either we have to.
Generically, it will obey the same Klein-Gordon equation. You know, other than the tensor coefficients, which are like wearing a hat, the guy is the same. Okay, so
yes,
its overall behavior will be the same. So yeah. Ultimately, this is the whole lesson of Weinberg volume 1 actually, that the propagator has poles at p square equal to m square. Everything else in the numerator is for fun. I mean, it's all the spin sums and things like that. So as a result, the behavior for graviton will also be similar. There must be some reason or the assumption or no, I can't see any reason why gravitons will behave specially. But by the way, the mode functions that you set up for scalar field with e raised to minus plus I omega t times this space dependent function, how those functions behave on the boundary, you know, it's
yes, right. It decays like this.
We decided the degree at r to the minus delta. No, that gives no hint as to what will happen to graviton. Because typically graviton will also up to some normalization acquire same frequencies, right? The graviton standing modes, allowed mode of graviton will be somewhat similar up to some changes because of the spin 2 part. So yeah, it's not completely clear that graviton is going to remain confined and not show up at infinity. I don't know anything about this subject, so carry on, it's okay. We will assume that they are frozen at the boundary.
Yeah, means from making an analogy with the scalar case calculation, we see that at r equal infinity we have this choice with r to the power something positive or negative. So we are taking negative because we want to rule out positive one. The problem will be then if we had something like e to the power iota r, oscillatory behavior. This would have been dangerous situation. So I'm hoping we will not have this. I don't have exact answer for this.
We'll probably see as we go on. Perhaps there will be some hint what they assume. Okay.
Yes. So the boundary correlation function is defined as follows. At infinity, the wave function decays as this, r to the power minus delta. So we just take the limit r to the power r tending to infinity, then we will get 0 because of this decaying factor. So to extract non-zero quantity, we multiply it by the inverse, r to the power delta, and then take limit. So this is the definition of the boundary correlation functions, and these are the observables of the theory. But there are a few things about this. The original bulk correlation function, which we are thinking is the observable, if this were the observable, then this would have been SOD, 2 invariant. Although this is the symmetry is not manifest, but it is still there. But while defining bulk correlators, I multiplied by R, and R is not SOD, 2 invariant. It is SO2 invariant. When we do full transformation, it will be like when you kind of boost in 2-dimensional time, then you will mix, there will be kind of length contraction, and this R will change. So in general, this R will change, and because of that, this is not SOD, 2 invariant, but a covariant object. Okay, so this is the observable 2-point correlation function. I will not do this calculation in the gravity theory. I will do this calculation from the CFT side. But in the gravity theory, you can, since the theory is fully developed, you have the full mode expansion. You can do this calculation. It's exercise. It's very messy. I will tell you how that you should, how you will do this, how the calculation proceeds. So substitute the mode expansion for the field phi, and then use the commutation relation for A and A dagger. And by doing the full calculation, you will get that this is proportional to this 1 upon cos t minus t prime minus cos alpha to the power delta, where this alpha is the geodesic distance between these 2 points. That is, it is a kind of arc length between these 2 points when projected on the SD minus 1 sphere. So this is a very important observable of the quantum theory. I'm not doing calculation in quantum gravity, but I will do it from CFT side to establish correspondence. But here is an idea how we will proceed with the calculation in quantum gravity in ADS. Okay, and in general, what I will show, I will establish the correspondence at a 2-point function level. In general, to fully prove the ADS CFT correspondence, we should show that the n-point correlation function are in correspondence with each other for all n. But till now, we haven't proved ADS CFT correspondence is not proven. It is a conjecture. We have checked for a lot of example and it works. And at a stage, we expect that this is indeed true. So when calculation becomes hard on gravity side, we do it from ADS side. I will describe how that works.
I will tell you a comment of S.T. Yao, the Yao of Calabi-Yau manifolds. He visited us in 2008, and as I told you once as a joke, mathematicians invited him, but mathematicians couldn't follow anything that he said. Whereas I at least knew a little bit of string theory, so I knew what. So while we were having dinner or something somewhere, I asked him some question or the other. And then he said, in string theory, everything is a conjecture. There are no proofs. Everything is a conjecture.
Sad. I think I should be very happy because of this. So what to expect from ADS CFT? So it will be that the boundary correlation function in quantum gravity will correspond to correlation function in other theory, theory, quantum field theory living in D dimension with scale invariance. That is a CFT theory. And in that theory, there will be no gravity. And the space in which the CFT theory lives will be isomorphic to the boundary of the ADS space. This is what is the conjecture, and I will develop that. So before that, I will review conformal field theory. First of all, why conformal field theory in general is important. There are two reasons. One practical reason is that during phase transition, we find that the system becomes conformal. Just a heuristic comment, the people doing TCMP can try the Monte Carlo simulation for Ising model, and they can check there that the system has conformal symmetry, scale invariance during phase transition. And the other important reason for theoretical purposes is that if you try to work with the space of all possible quantum field theory, like that we do in renormalization RG flows, then it turns out that in space of all possible quantum field theory, there are special points, the special quantum field theories from and the RG flows merge on these theories or either go out from these theories. And these special points are the CFT with the quantum field theory with scale invariance, SOD, 2 symmetry. So this is why conformal field theory in general is important. So what is conformal field theory? It is a quantum field theory with scale invariance. And as a consequence of scale invariance, we will see that the stress energy, the trace of the stress energy tensor is 0. This is not exactly 0. It is actually a linear combination of equation of motion. That is when we impose equation of motion, this becomes 0 in general. So just a comment on what is stress energy tensor. When we vary a metric, note that this is not the quantum fluctuation in the metric. Now there is no gravity, but when I say that I'm changing metric in CFT calculation, I'm actually going to new space. I'm working to new theory. So I will be computing formulas which will relate correlation functions in two different theories, but still CFT. Okay, so the variation in action when we vary metric will be this, this delta G mu nu, and this T mu nu will be the measure of the variation. And we know this formula T mu nu is like proportional to del S by del G mu nu. We have seen in GR. Okay, so when we have scale invariance, that is when metric is scaled like this, e to the power omega 2 omega times t, then we can see that dg is actually proportional to g. Okay, so this is just proportional to g. So if delta S is 0, this means that this integral G mu nu times T mu nu has to be 0. So from there we can see that this has to be 0, at least proportional to the equation of motion. Okay, so yeah, this has been done. Okay, so when the system has conformal invariance, that is when metric can be changed by this conformal factor, when the system has this symmetry, it means that all the observables will be same when we do this transformation. So the correlation function, these OI are the operators in the conformal field theory. The expectation value of these two, this correlation of this operator in G mu nu metric and e to the power 2 omega G mu nu metric, the conformally related metric will be same. But this is not exactly true. We will see why. But when the operators don't transform under this conformal transformation, in that case, this is true. But in general, this operator will transform. And the reason is follows, that this trace of that this trace is not 0 of stress energy tensor. It is proportional to equation of motion. For the usual scalar field, Klein-Gordon field, you can calculate the T mu nu, and it comes out to be this, very well known. And this is not 0 by itself, but when you impose equation of motion, then it can become 0. The trace of this becomes 0. Sorry. So in general, the trace is a linear combination of this del S, functional derivative S with respect to this field phi I. This is just equation of motion. Equation of motion is this being 0. Okay. So now we want this to be 0. This can be made 0 if I make my fields transform as follows. Phi goes to phi I plus ci phi. Ci phi is the coefficient of this. Okay, because in that case, when we do this transformation of fields itself, then del phi will be proportional to ci. So this is actually del phi I. Okay, so then you see this just becomes delta S under the variation of the fields. So by extremation action principle, this has to be 0. Okay, so if we want this to be 0, then we have to consider the variation in fields, that when we do conformal transformation, the operators and the quantum field, this phi field gets changed. So in general, we will have this equation that this expectation value will be same in these two different metric, but the operator will change to something O prime. The operator will transform. Okay, and now we will work with some particular, and there are in CFT there is particular class of operators which transform in a certain way, and they are kind of sufficient to write any general operator. Okay, and small comment just for completeness, this the trace condition might not hold, and that is called conformal anomaly in non-flat background. This might be proportional to, usually it is proportional to terms involving Riemann tensor. So in that case, this equation is not true by itself, but this will pick up some factor. Okay, there will be some a conformal anomaly function.
That is quantum effects. That anomaly is quantum effects.
Yes, but for practical purposes, this will not affect our analysis, because we usually work with normalized correlation function. So you divide by partition function, that is the expectation value of the identity operator. Okay, and this factor is independent of the which operators which you are using. So when you divide by that, this will cancel up. Okay, so in conformal field theory, there are special kind of operator called conformal primaries. Those operator transforms with this by this scaling, and the scaling is like e to the power delta I omega. Omega is the conformal factor, and this delta I is called the weight of this primary operator. So these operators just scale by scaling the metric with some different weight. Okay, so this serves a kind of building block of the operators in conformal field theory, and there are the descendant of these operators, which are the derivative of this. So these primary operators and their derivative operators serves as a kind of basis for the general operator possible in CFT. That is the full CFT theory. I will not go in that detail. So what I will do, I will do the calculation for these basis operators, the primary operators. Okay. So yeah, so for the primary operators transforms by this factor. So here we had actually O prime. So this O prime was e to the power delta I times O. So when we take this E on RHS, we will have e to the power minus here, something like this. Note, okay. Now what we do is that given any general theory, we can do general coordinate transformation. And by doing general coordinate transformation, this equation will hold in general, that expectation value, when we compute the expectation value in the other metric G prime, which is related to the original metric by general coordinate transformation, then we should work with the corresponding coordinates, the transform coordinates. So this equation is just a tautology. It's just a way of representing the coordinate invariant meaning of observables. Okay. Now I will do GCT, general coordinate transformation of a very special kind. And now I will be working with the Minkowski metric. And from this Minkowski metric, by doing some transformation, I will construct the cylinder of the ADS. Okay. Now we do this transformation where this Minkowski metric is scaled, rescaled. Okay. So and these operators are scalar under general coordinate transformation. Okay. That we are assuming that this operator don't change under general coordinate transformation. But when we do this conformal transformation, we actually go to different space that is not GCT. So there the operator might change. Okay. So we have this equation. This will be some x prime, and this okay. Yeah, we get this in the and but when we have CFT, when we use when we have conformal symmetry in the theory, then this piece, then we have an expression for this, which I showed above, then this is equal to this. And usually there is that exponential a factor. Okay, so by equating all this, just look at the result. We have this expression. This gives us the expectation value of the correlation function in same space, in the same space, but at different points. And the points are related by this conformal Weyl transformation. No, sorry, conformal. When you do Weyl transformation, it changes space. I'm not going in that detail, sorry. So this equation relates you the correlation function in the same metric. Okay, so this, yeah.
In the boundary, you mean at other different points of the boundary?
Yes, yes. For now, we are not worrying about the boundary. Later, we will show. This is general CFT. For now, it is not necessarily the boundary of the ADS.
General, okay, fine.
Yeah, CFT in general, and the space time we have taken is the Minkowski.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So now let's consider the dilatation. I think Pushkar showed there was 4 generators. This is the dilatation. That's the usual scaling. So under the usual scaling of the coordinates, the modified metric will be this. It will pick up the scaling factor. Okay. So using this equation, we will have this thing. So this is an equation which equates the correlation function in the Minkowski metric. But on RHS, we have the points lying on lambda xi, and on LHS we have point lambda xi, and on RHS we have rescaled point xi. Okay? With this equation, we are actually able to fix 2-point, 3-point, and even 4-point correlation function. I think in general, in some simple cases, we are able to fix all n-point correlation function in CFT. For now, I will do the complete calculation for the 2-point correlation function with this. So I will do this calculation. I am explicitly using this subscript to keep track of in which space this correlation function is being computed. This is RD, 1, the Minkowski. Okay, this is the 2-point correlation function. So because of the translational symmetry, this has to be a function of x minus x tilde. Okay, and since it is a invariant under it is, and since this is a scalar, a Lorentz invariant, so it will be proportional to the Lorentz invariant quantity, which can, it will be a function of Lorentz invariant quantity, which we can construct from x minus x tilde. That is the Minkowski norm. Okay, so this correlation function will be in general a function of x minus x tilde square. For now, let's call this y. So this, when we impose this equation on this object f, this translates into saying that this f satisfies a particular relation, and that relation is this functional relation. F of lambda x is equal to this scaling, q is the scaling weight time this f of x. Okay, and now you can do this mathematics. I've written the complete derivation. By doing this, you can show that this fx is proportional to x to the power q. So from here we see that this function is proportional to 1 upon, this was my like y power minus delta, because here this proportionality thing was, we had lambda to the power redefined lambda to the power 2 as some q, then this is like the q power minus delta, the q which was appearing here. Okay, so I showed that this 2-point correlation function is this. Now it is in a Minkowski space. I hope I'm not confusing. So now we do a Wick rotation. We will go to Euclidean coordinates. Why we are going to with Euclidean coordinates? To use larger symmetry. If I go to Euclidean coordinate, that is, if I Wick rotate the time, work with imaginary time, then we will be working with RD plus 1, and this has SOD symmetry. We can use the larger rotational symmetry. That will simplify the calculation. So in that case, this x minus x tilde norm square will be just this. We will not have minus sign, because the minus sign has been taken care by this iota square. Okay, so in this RD plus 1 Euclidean space, we will again write this x coordinate in terms of these polar angles. Okay, and the metric in that new space is this d rho square plus rho square d. This is the usual RD metric in spherical coordinates. Okay, now we have the freedom of SOD symmetry. So by SOD symmetry, I can change the I can rotate the vectors by keeping the angles between these two x and x tilde same. So the SOD will not change the norm of the vector, but by using SOD rotation, I can fix all the angles of say x to be 0. Okay, just orient your axis along that. And by SOD rotation, change the orientation of your axis such that the rest of the angle theta tilde 2, theta tilde 3 for the x tilde other coordinate is 0. But there will be one non-trivial angle. Okay, so this is it's just this. I will show you this picture. Yeah, this is your x and this is your x tilde. Your axis is oriented along this so that your all theta 1 and theta 2 are 0 for this x, and this x tilde at some angle theta tilde from this. Okay, so this is the geodesic distance, the arc length between these 2 points, the alpha which was appearing in the calculation for the quantum gravity. Okay, so now this norm can be written as this. Okay, this is some expression, don't go in detail. So the expectation value in this Euclidean space is this expression. Note that the space is different. Right now it is not the boundary of ADS. Now I will do a coordinate transformation, some scaling, rho equal to e to the power tau. And in that coordinates, the metric become this. So this metric is, see how this matrix is just this is taking positive value. This is like Euclidean coordinate. So this is R cross unit sphere. So the metric in these coordinates, the space-time is R cross unit sphere time this dilatation. Okay, sorry, conformal factor. If suppose this metric is called G mu nu, so this whole thing, the metric is e to the power tau t2 tau times G mu nu. Okay, so the expectation value of this correlation function in this is shown to be this. Okay, now I have to remove this conformal factor so that I can get cylinder. The boundary of the ADS was only cylinder. Right now this R is not the usual time, it is the Euclidean time. So I would have to further weak rotate. I will do that later. So to remove this conformal factor, I will use that equation, which I found that how the correlation function are related in different space-time, which are related by conformal transformation. Okay, so that will give these factors e to the power tau plus tau delta. Because of this thing, the operators were transforming like this, e to the power minus delta I times omega, and the omega here is just tau. Okay, so if I remove this conformal factor, I have to multiply this RHS by this using that equation, and then simplifying this, I will get this end at the end. So now you see it is matching a bit with our quantum gravity result. This cos theta is appearing, but here we have some hyperbolic cos. And we want to make it the usual cos. To do that, I will again weak rotate, because at the end, the boundary of the ADS was the R of the cylinder was the time-like thing.
So where did we discuss quantum gravity result on the?
I will just show you. Remember when I told that this 2-point Berg correlation function. I skipped the calculation. I presented how we proceed with the calculation. This can be done since the scalar quantum theory is complete. I have completed that theory, but it is a big mess calculation. Here you see we have this cos alpha cos of t minus t prime. This expression is matching.
But this is quantum gravity on what space?
This is quantum gravity on ADS-D plus 1 space, and this is the bulk correlation function, the correlation function on the boundary on ADS.
No. So bulk correlation function.
Sorry, not bulk, boundary correlation function. Sorry.
Boundary, yeah. So no, so gravity is not there. No, at the boundary we agreed that there will be no quantum gravity at the boundary.
Yeah, the fluctuation will die out.
Yeah. So.
But in this ADS space, gravity is there. Means we have been considering metric fluctuation. Yeah. So as a whole, the gravity is there in this theory. I think that's why we say quantum gravity results.
Okay. Oh, so there is R in this. Oh, sorry. Okay. So you are saying the limit R, but so that's the thing. No, R to the 2 delta factor out the R dependence from the fields, and then you should be just left with T and alpha dependence. So I thought this was all boundary theory. Where is the quantum gravity coming in? Not yet, no, I think. Bulk theory, this is not the bulk theory.
No, this is not the bulk theory. But the whole ADS, including the boundary, has quantum gravity, right? Means we are considering metric flux, but okay, I'm getting.
Yeah, let's say on the boundary the gravity is frozen, right? In whichever way, either by boundary conditions or by whatever. It's a pure CFT, non-gravity CFT. So okay, let us see what you are going to show this to be equivalent to.
But in CFT, we never considered gravity.
Right, exactly. The gravity is irrelevant to CFT.
But in the ADS calculation, we started with gravity, but I get it. Means I am further demanding that gravity is dying out at infinity.
Yes.
So gravity is inside.
Okay. So those correlators are your ADS functions, but in the limit of r going to infinity, and in that sense, they are the full quantum gravity operators, is a correlator.
Yes.
Okay.
Because that is what we can know in that quantum gravity theory, because the bulk correlators were not defined. So the whole observable, whatever observables are there in quantum gravity theory is the boundary observables.
Right.
And that's why.
Yes.
So by doing the Wick rotation, so instead of Euclidean time, we will have this usual time RT, and this cosh will become cos. So we recover this result, okay? And now I will just flash you the result of the ADS calculation. It is something similar to this, okay? So, so this is the first glimpse that there is some relation between ADS and CFT. And you see that this space on which this CFT is, this space is isomorphic to the boundary of the ADS, okay? RT cross HD -1 in this coordinate choice. If we would have used Poincare patch, which Pushkar discussed, then this would have been the Minkowski space. I will not go in detail. Okay. So this suggests that the correlation functions from in ADS are related to correlation function on CFT, where the CFT lives on the boundary of the ADS. So the quantum gravity on the bulk, yeah, we are saying bulk, I don't know why, is in correspondence with the CFT theory living on the boundary where there is no gravity. Okay, so this is the corresponding between operators and fields in quantum gravity. If we just compare this, if these are equal, okay? So we want to equate this with this. So this suggests that this operator O is proportional to phi with this factor r to the power delta. So this is one correspondence equation between operators and fields, okay? In general, this CFT space will have other operators also, the descendants, the derivative of the primary operators, and that will be related to the so-called multi-particle states of the quantum gravity in the quantum gravity theory. I will not go into that detail. It is related to the double tracing operator, which we do in CFT. So we have an idea about how the Hilbert space will be isomorphic to the Hilbert space in the CFT theory. Okay, so I've not proven you the ADS CFT correspondence, and I've just presented you an example for the 2-point correlation function, that it is indeed 2 for 2-point correlation function, and we should check for 3, 4, and any number of correlation function. And people have done, and it works out. Okay, so one example of how it works, I will not go in very detail, but you will give you an idea. So this is very famous example for ADS CFT correspondence. You don't have to worry about this detail. So there is some theory called type 2B string theory.
Could you just remind me one thing? So in usual Minkowski field theory, we have this Wick's theorem, right, by which we break down all the n-point correlators in terms of 2-point correlators. So does something like that hold true for these correlators also, or do they break down somewhere?
I have not seen. I have not seen. And even if it exists, I means people. Even if it exists, people were not able to use that to compute general expression endpoint correlation function. Otherwise, you would have proven the conjecture. I have not seen.
So just as a tangential question, what makes Wick's theorem work in Minkowski space? Maybe we can discuss that later because it's not related here. But
Well, the only requirement is that the correlation function shouldn't have any poles going from real axis to imaginary. There should not be any poles in between. So then you are okay.
Should I proceed? Just an example. So there is a theory, type 2B string theory, some theory which lives on ADS5 cross S5 space. And there is some other weird theory, n equal to 4, super Yang-Mills theory, SUN theory. It is roughly like a n component electromagnetic field, but some super symmetry imposed. Will not go in that detail. But now I will show how this correspondence work at a kind of Lagrangian level of this theory. There is correspondence between the parameters. This is a string theory, so it will have some string coupling constant which governs the interaction between strength. This will be one parameter of the theory, and there will be one other parameter, the radius of the ADS space. So the string theory will have two parameters, GS and R, and the Yang-Mills theory will have parameter, the Yang-Mills coupling constant, and the n of the SUN, the number of the independent fields which you are using. So here you have two parameters, and here you have two parameters. The correspondence gives you the relation between the this parameters. So from there you can, and given those relation, you can switch the result. So given this relation, if you have result for this string theory calculation, you can get the result for the Yang-Mills theory, and vice versa. So the result is this: that string GS is proportional to G of Ym square, and the R, the ADS scale, is proportional to G square Ym n to the power 1/4. From this result will dictate a very important nature of how this ADS safety correspondence is practically used. Note that when R is large, when the ADS length is large, when in gravity, then in the gravity side, the calculation will become easy, because when R is large, the curvature will become small. So the calculation will be easy. I am speaking very heuristically here. Okay, but when R is large, then since these are proportional, the Yang-Mills interaction will be large. So if the interaction is large, then you can't use the perturbation theory in this Yang-Mills wala CFT. So when the calculation becomes easy on the gravity side, then it will become difficult on the CFT side. Okay, and vice versa. If this G is small, then the coupling constant is small, then the calculation in CFT side will become easy. You can use perturbation theory and all. But if G is small, this R will become small. R will become small, curvature will become large. So the calculation on gravity side will become very large. So we'll have a lot of trouble. So this is how what we do. Means we believe this conjecture is true. When the calculation is being difficult in gravity side, then in most of the cases it will be easy in CFT side, because it's something like this correspondence. This correspondence in most of the times maps hard problems in gravity side to easy problem in CFT side, and vice versa. Okay, and that we will even see with how the divergence, how the cutoffs are related in these two different theories. Okay, here I plan to cover some thermal ADS. Let's say it very briefly. There's no time. This time coordinate can be Wick rotated, and we know when we work with imaginary time, then the quantum field theory is just equivalent to the thermal physics on that space. So even this correspondence hold in the thermal ADS and thermal CFT. Okay, if people want, we can discuss it later. Now this is the last piece. I'm just about to end. The IR cutoff in gravity is related to the UV cutoff in CFT. Okay, so in the ADS we have this metric. Okay, now the boundary is, let's say the boundary is at some R naught. R naught is very large. Since we are putting some cutoff, I will not directly take R to be infinity, but let's say it's some R naught and later take limit R naught to be large. So let's parameterize that R naught by the small delta. It's like capital R by delta. If delta is very small, this will become very large. Okay, so the boundary metric will become this. Okay, we will have this factor r square upon delta square, and this piece is just RT cross ST minus 1, the cylinder. This factor can be removed by Weyl transformation, this conformal transformation and all. Okay, so we see that this R by delta is the infrared cutoff. This is the infrared cutoff in gravity, the large distance cutoff. Okay, now we will see how this delta will appear in the UV cutoff in the CFT theory. It's a bit tricky. Okay, so the gravity theory, usually most of the time we will do string theory. Okay, so string theory will naturally give us some cutoff, LS, or even suppose we put some UV cutoff in string theory, in the gravity theory. So when we remove this conformal factor to get the boundary theory, we will be rescaling thing. So this LS will rescale accordingly. LS will become LS times delta by R. So now this will be the rescaled UV cutoff on the boundary. Okay, so if R by delta is the IR cutoff in the gravity side, then on the boundary the UV cutoff is this LS delta by R. These both have the expression delta. So this delta, when we when we remove this delta, eliminate delta, we will get a kind of relation between IR cutoff and the UV cutoff. So again, you see, this is something like that. Hard problems in gravity is equivalent to easy problems in CFT. And many times if you face problem in CFT calculation, due to the correspondence, that calculation will be easy in IR side. Okay, so this is how we, as I like to say that people use ADS-CFT correspondence, the practical way to use practical application of ADS-CFT for theoretical purposes. Okay, so now I am almost done. So just two references. This is paper by David Harlow. You can go on archive. And these are a few lectures by Ashok Sen on entanglement and geometry. He also uploaded I attended his lecture, and you can find my lecture notes there. This has everything in great detail, around 16 lectures. Later he also, and later he actually also covers holography. He uses ADS-CFT correspondence. And there they actually use the language of quantum computing. Quantum error code is, everything is used. If people want, I can maybe give next lecture after EndSem. Okay, I just want to end by this shairi. This shairi summarizes the whole of the ADS-CFT correspondence. Should I say it, sir? Okay, so thank you. महबूब की अदा को हम दूर से परख लेते हैं, हर पैमाने पे उन्हें खुद में पा लेते हैं। क्या सच में हम दो एक हैं या बस एक भरम है जो एक दूसरे की खामियों को पूरा कर देते हैं? यहाँ महबूब is the quantum gravity and हम, me, is the CFT, and I'm mentioning this मतलब I can understand everything about her from far away, since it's like, and this is manifesting the boundary. And har paimana means scale, the scale invariance. So from every scale I can see that she is behaving like me. And then I put this question mark, is this really true? Because people have not proven ADS-CFT. Okay, so it might turn out ये सब भरम है, सब झूठ है, and that will be very sad, heartbroken. And at the end, जो एक दूसरे की खामियों को पूरा कर देते हैं. This is the practical application thing I was talking. मतलब जो यहाँ पे gravity में hard होता है, that thing is easy in CFT sides, and the hard thing in CFT is easy in gravity sides. So they are complementing each other. So this shairi summarizes everything about ADS-CFT correspondence. Thank you, sir. And just a request, can I post this lecture in my YouTube channel? I wanted to ask you.
Yeah,
if
sure.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. And yeah, it got recorded here, and you will upload these slides in the file.
Sure, sir.
Thank you. Okay, fantastic. Although I didn't quite catch when you made the switch from just the CFT side to the gravity side, the bulk side. Where was exactly that you changed discussion from one to the other?
Can you repeat your question? What I was doing, I did the independent calculation in the gravity side. I computed the correlation function. And then I was considering a different CFT theory on the Minkowski space. These are two different theories.
Yes.
I was doing the computation, and then by doing transformation, I made this. I converted this Minkowski space to Euclidean space,
Gravity side also you are scaling out Weil factor. What was it? Can you go back to the gravity side of the correlator calculation? Gravity side of the correlator calculation.
Yeah. Gravity side. Just yeah, this is the result. Here I was not using any Weil transformation. Here I was not using that the boundary has any conformal symmetry.
Okay.
I just took limit r tends to infinity. And I showed that I could recover this result if I impose conformal invariance on the boundary. But that is a new separate theory, CFT theory.
No. So you are saying that this you could of course calculate from those mode functions that you had set up.
Yes.
And we factor out the r to the 2 delta factor because we are taking r going to infinity limit. And if we do this calculation in the bulk, the answer is this. So that is that question, but that is that statement. And then what happens on the conformal field theory side? The correlator of two operators.
Yeah, I computed separately on the Minkowski space. By doing transformation, I try to make the space isomorphic to the boundary of this ADS. And when I do that, I see that the correlation function matches with this.
And that delta in that case is the weight of the
conformal weight. So again, here is a duality. The delta of this theory, which was made from d/2 plus mr square,
yes,
is related to the conformal weight of the operators, the primary operators. Right. So these pieces are like a kind of one-to-one mapping.
Correct.
And there's more thing to cover in this. In CFT, we have state operator correspondence. So that further changes is related with few things in gravity side, which I was not able to cover. That is related to double tracing. Okay. If I get a chance, I can cover in next lecture.
Any other questions?
So just as a general note, like to what extent has this been tested? I think you said that people have checked this calculation in several cases. Like, so essentially do like high energy physicists like assume that this correspondence is true, like whoever is working on it. So can we say that with some certainty, or is it just
any real high energy physicist doesn't choose any of this? There are string theorists and then there are high energy theorists. String theorists live at the Planck scale, so they are not in the high energy is just TeV scale. Okay, so
people have checked it for a lot of examples, lot of correlators.
Answer his question in case he doesn't know this. What is true though is that quantum chromodynamics, the theory of strong interaction, is a Yang-Mills theory. Of course, it is not supersymmetric. But suppose you supersymmetrize the Yang-Mills theory of strong interactions, and that is in 4 dimensions, so that is fully valid. It turns out that those correlators, had the strong interactions been conformally invariant, can actually be calculated by using methods of weak gravity. And there they have been able to calculate this ratio of bulk viscosity to entropy. And they find that they can put a limit on the value of the ratio of bulk viscosity to entropy of a fluid on the conformal field theory side, starting from gravity side. And this from the type 2b string theory. Okay. So then they show that there is a lower bound on this value that it can attain. And in quark-gluon plasma, in the heavy ion collisions, where through the collision, the whole nuclei melt down, right? And there is just a gas of course, there are a lot of controversies on every single statement I'm making, but assuming that the collision of two lead nuclei at very high energy melts down, and in the core at least some semblance of a quark-gluon plasma is created, and conditions somewhat similar to a second order phase transition, so that there is some scale invariance in that medium, then that should resemble a supersymmetric quantum field, this scale invariant CFT. But what that none of this statement is true. But had that been true, had that been true, you can extract, but you can experimentally extract bulk viscosity to entropy density ratio for the quark-gluon plasma ball, and they claim that it gets fairly close to the bound, some geometric number 1/4 pi or something, that the limit that the ADS CFT correspondence puts. So this one application has been found, and it is actually a very unusual substance. Very few substances will achieve this extremely low ratio, but that is found in, they claim that the quark-gluon plasmas display that property in a rough sense. I mean, in approximate order of magnitude, or I mean, how exactly equal it is, I don't know, but they claim that it goes all the way down to that value. So that is one quote practical application that was found of this, where QCD calculations are impossible to do, but you can actually recover the answer from a bulk gravity calculation.
Okay, sure.
Does that answer the question? Is that what you would have liked?
Yeah, that is essentially what I wanted to hear.
So can you go to the very beginning where you define the ADS cutoff, like ADS parameter capital R? Yeah, so capital R is a function of these coordinates, and then you said R is a like a characteristic length scale of this space, ADS space. So I didn't understand. How is this? I mean, how do you define, like, it's not a constant, right? It's
No, I am posing the equation of surface is this left. This is some function. The function f of x is some constant.
Yeah.
It's like
sorry. Okay.
R is not to be
It's
thought
kind of
of as a function. This is a constraint equation on the
it's a
coordinate
constraint equation.
of the vectors.
If you change R, you will get another hypersurface. You know, this is in R1, R2, R3 greater, something like that. This is the constraint equation. R is constant, imposing. This is the defining equation for the subspace script f.
Like when we say that like the space has an effective negative cosmological constant. So, for example, in our space, the one we live in, it has a positive constant and it's expanding. Like the space is dynamic because of that. So, does having a negative cosmological constant shouldn't the like I'm intuitively picturing, shouldn't the whole thing be contracting as such, and there shouldn't be a I mean, are you getting what I'm trying to say? Like, is the space ADS space stable, so as to say? I mean, or not dynamic? I don't know.
I think Sir answered it to some extent. You were telling about some.
Classically unstable, of course. I mean, so the section that you look at, so if you want to rethink in terms of Friedman, Robertson, Walker, then you have to separate out the time from the space part and put a scale factor. Then I think that cylinder that was shown gets sliced in some different way, and that does collapse. It will go down to zero value eventually. So I think there is some kind of a diamond on the surface, which is actually a physically realized. If you build a universe on this.
Oh, so it shrinks. Okay, I see.
It shrinks instead of growing. It exponentially will collapse.
Okay.
The simplest way I understand ADS is take de Sitter, where the Friedman-Robertson-Walker scale factor will be e to the ht, Hubble constant. If it is ADS, you have to put minus ht. That's the very simple but that probably gives one patch of it, like the Schwarzschild patch. Whereas this is like a global piece together ADS.
I think that gives the Poincare patch which Pushkar covered. The Poincare coordinates.
Correct. Thank you. So good. Thank you. Any other questions? No, then we have finished in fairly good time. Of course, you went like a Tufan mail or whatever it is called. Rajdhani Express.
I would ideally need 3 hours to do this.
That is true. That is true. There are so many things that went very fast. In fact, I missed the fact when you made the switch from doing bulk correlators to this. Okay.
I want
Fine.
to present a general idea how this goes. I will upload these notes. These are bit long, 67 pages.
Now we can go through the notes, and of course, anybody interested can go through the TASI lecture and understand it much more quickly. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So you can put up on YouTube, but the speed at which it goes, I don't know who on YouTube will. The local audience is the best audience you have. You realize that in the world, probably at this age group. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They will have to watch at 0.5x.
That's true. That's right. And then we go to the mount. Okay. Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah. Bye. Bye, everyone.
So are we having a talk on Thursday also?
Yeah, Thursday talk. Who was going to give?
Sir,